Well, hello. It's time for another assembly. It's good to have a chance to speak to you all again. It's been really lovely in school today and last week to see so many students back in school having lessons, year 10s and 12s, and increasing numbers of children from key workers in school. So schools felt a little bit more normal with students going backwards and forward to lessons and people out and about at lunchtime a bit. Obviously, all of us here, all your staff, hope that very soon we'll have you all back in school, and we look forward to seeing you all again. I know that many of you will have been catching up with tutors over the last week or two, or over the next couple of weeks. You'll have a chance to speak to staff and see how you're getting on, so that we can see how you're getting on and check in with you. It's really important, I think, for me just to say to you how much we're all really impressed by the way you've got engaged with the online work. We know it's challenging for you, and so many of you have really got stuck in and worked really hard, and it's a real testament to just how resilient and determined and capable you are, and you should feel very proud of yourselves for the way you've coped through these very difficult times. So just thinking about an assembly, I suppose that the thing that's dominated the last 2 or 3 weeks, in my mind, in the news, on the papers and on the television, has been the Black Lives Matters marches and campaigns, and the discussions about statues and public images. Obviously Edward Colston, close to home here in Bristol, having the statue pulled down and dumped in the harbour and then got out again and put in a museum. So an awful lot to think about. And one of the things that struck me was a quotation that I've used in assemblies, in presentation evenings by the American educationalist and thinker Margaret Mead. Obviously, I talk a great deal about this being a happy, caring and excellent school, and try and explain what those words mean and how we can interpret them. And the word caring is the one that this relates to directly, and it's a very well-known quote from Margaret Mead, and it is never doubt that a few caring people can't change the world, for indeed that is all who ever did. And we've seen around the world, particularly of course in America to start off with, but all around the world after that, groups of people caring very passionately about society and injustice and unfairness in the world. And it strikes me that peaceful protest, peaceful obviously, it's essential that it is peaceful, but peaceful protest is a fundamental right. It's something that is incredibly important, and as Margaret Mead said, it's the thing that does change the world. When caring people who really care enough about things, care enough to go out and say that Black Lives Matter, to care enough to go out and campaign to change the way our cities and towns look, and to change the law, and to change the way governments and societies behave and treat people. People who care enough to do that do change the world, and that's what has always changed the world over time. That's what's overthrown dictators and made the world a better and safer place. And so it's really important to see that, and I think it's a wonderful thing as teachers, as people who work in schools, to see so many young people feeling empowered and feeling confident enough and feeling passionately enough to go and say what really matters to them, and join those peaceful protests. We saw it earlier over this year and last year with the climate change campaigns as well. Again, another group of passionate, committed young people, mostly young people, leading protests and campaigns that will undoubtedly change the world. So never doubt that a few caring people can change the world, for indeed that's all who ever have. The other thing that struck me, and it struck me, there was an interesting article in one of the papers I was reading about the discussion about statues and the state of statues, the role of statues in modern life, and reference to a poem. And you know I like to include a poem in assemblies if I can. And this is a very famous poem by Percy Bysshe Shelley called Ozymandias, and I'll just read it to you and then talk a little bit about what it might mean. I met a traveller from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear: My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing besides remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away." A beautiful and powerful image of a ruined statue in a desert. And really what I think Shelley is getting at there is that sense of hubris and grandeur, that some people can believe that they can have statues that last forever and that they have a right to be remembered forever for some perceived great work. And I think one of the interesting things that it made me think about was that statues have always been put up by people to commemorate people that the society of that time sees as great, but equally they've always been taken down by people, knocked down, pulled down, or just removed as times have changed. I remember going to Prague years ago, and in Czechoslovakia, as it was then, they gathered up many of the statues of Stalin and Lenin and other Soviet-era leaders and put them in a statue park. So they're not erased from history, they're still part of history, but they're put in their proper context. And I think the great thing about the protests and the discussion about the role of statues and the role of slavery in our society is it reminds us just how important history is, and that we really do need to concentrate and learn history in school so that we don't make the mistakes of the past and we can put the current situation into a proper context. So lots to think about. Again, I hope you're all very well, you keep well, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.